Hi, I'm Mike Thompson. The Ides of March have just passed, and so it's time to start thinking about building a boat. We're less than 4 months, about 3.5. Now, quick note. Anytime I talk about dimensions of pieces, I'm always giving them in with the grain, across the grain format. So, a piece like this could be 12 by 3 with the grain running this way, because 12 is the dimension that runs with the grain, 3 is the dimension that runs across the grain. Similarly, you would have if the grain were this way, this would be a 3 by 12 piece, because the 3 is the dimension with the grain by 12. Length and width can get kind of confusing, but I'm always going to give you dimensions. When I say a piece is 18 by 6, that means it's going to be 18 inches with the grain, 6 inches across the grain. And we're going to use that as our length and width as a standard nomenclature throughout this whole building process. I find it just makes it a lot easier. And since you typically measure with the grain first anyway, that makes more sense. If you've seen my other videos, you know how we're going to do the analysis and everything. But it's time to figure out how to actually put the boat together. If this is your first time building a boat, don't do the rookie mistake and make a cardboard box, in a square, rectangular, prismatic shape. Whatever you do, don't do that. We're going to take a balanced, sort of simplistic approach for this first boat. What we're going to do is use a flat bottom and straight sides, but we're going to shape it such that it'll actually be fairly fast. So we're going to use the lenticular shape, like I mentioned before. If you look at the boat from the top, it's going to look like this. If you look at it from the front, I guess we need to draw it over here, don't we? If you look at it from the front, it's going to look like that. From the side, it's going to look like that. This is actually pretty simple to build. The first thing you're going to do is lay down your bottom. When I build my boats, I'm limited to 4 by 8 sheets of 5/32 inch thick cardboard. Unfortunately, the grain does not run along the 8-foot dimension. It runs along the 4-foot dimension. So the longest structural piece I can have is only 4 feet long. Most boats I tend to build are 12 feet long. I find this gives a good aspect ratio, which is, the length to the width. So in order to build my boats, I have to build them so that they're in 3 sections. One thing you never want to do is have a piece or a seam of a piece run right down the middle of your boat. This is where the greatest stresses are going to be, and so you never ever want to have a seam run in here. The minimum number that you can have is 3 and still have a good quality joints. You need to use an odd number of sheets. This will make sure that you never have a seam running right down the center, right here along your maximum beam, which is the width of your boat. So the minimum number you can have is 3. We're also going to build a 12-foot boat, but I'm not going to tell you how wide it's going to be. I'm just going to tell you how to put it all together. The width will be calculated based on whatever hip size you have or whatever all you need to cram in your boat or how much you need to weigh, because you might need to vary the area a little bit. But it's really easy to make a 12-foot boat and find pieces that are 4 feet long. So we're going to stick with 12 feet, give or take a couple inches. In my case, they're actually a little bit shorter than 12 feet because this arc length here, the walls, are also made out of 4-foot long strips. Well, if you know anything about geometry, which you should, if you go in a curve, it's certainly farther than a straight line. So my boat can't be a full 12 feet from tip to tip because I have to account for this arc here. Since I want the minimum number of joints, which will be 3, I have to, on my walls, when I go to build them, they have joints as well, like this. Well, in order to make my maximum arc length is 12, as given by 3 times 4 feet of my cardboard piece. So really, the dimension from bow to stern of the boat has to be just a few inches shorter, which really is not a problem. It's essentially 12 feet. But my limiting case in design are my wall sections, actually. So that's just something to keep in mind. So what we're going to do, once you figure out what you need, we're going to lay out our boat. You're going to lay out your boat like this. So these 3 squares here represent how I lay out my pieces, and of course the grain runs this direction because that's where our maximum bending stress is going to be. As you're going to draw a line, don't draw it right down the middle of your cardboard because these are, in my case, 4 to 8 inch sheets on the side, and you'd waste an awful lot of cardboard if you drew right down the middle. So we're going to cheat over here. Measure over whatever your beam is going to be. Find the center. Let's say in our case we're going to build something that's 24. So maybe measure over 26. Okay? Then come back 12. This gives you a 2-inch edge. We're going to be cutting a curve along here like this, so you don't want to butt your line right up to your edge if you don't have to, because it's really hard to cut then as you come right around that curve. So always leave a little bit of extra just to waste if you can. So we're going to draw the center line. So we're going to draw the center line of our boat down all 3 pieces like this. Then we're going to use the arc calculator and figure out where each of our points need to be. I've got a link here in the video or something. I'll show you how to get. I've got a link in the video that says how we're going to do this. I use SolidWorks for mine, so it's already calculated. Then what you're going to do, this is the center of your boat here. This is your maximum beam. Measure out then every 6 or 12 inches. For a boat 12 feet long, 12 inches is probably fine. So you're going to go like that. You're going to make tick marks every, let's say 12 inches. Keep it simple. So we're going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course, this last tick mark won't be quite at 12 feet because our boat isn't quite 12 feet long. Let's say that our boat is 140 inches long. So this would be at the 70-inch mark. This one up here will also be at the 70-inch mark. These are where all of the bulkheads are going to be. Once we calculate our arc, is we measure out from our center line here a distance on each side and make a mark. So this kind of looks like fish bones. So you're going to do this for each side, and now you can see the outline of your boat. So we'll go ahead and draw that on this half. The tricky part here is you need to make a smooth curve. If you play connect the dots, you're going to get a fairly jagged outer edge. Well, we don't want to do that, so we're going to make our own spline and use that.